Glenn Quagmire has undergone some significant changes over the years. Though he began as a one-note character whose only interest was sex, he's slowly developed into someone that fans have come to appreciate for his brutal honesty and oddly solid convictions. Of course, with being a more fleshed out character, that meant that Quagmire was now able to be tossed into some dangerous situations. Now come and join us as we explore the top 10 worst things to happen to Quagmire. We're starting off our list at number 10 with Hiccups nearly costing him his life. When Quagmire was afflicted with the hiccups, he tried everything for them to do away. When all the usual tricks to get rid of them didn't work, like being scared, drinking water, or holding his breath, he branched out for some other help. Days dragged on without anyone being able to help him, and Quagmire became desperate. He was unable to sleep or eat and eventually went to Peter for help. In his desperation, he begged Peter to find a way to kill him, unable to live with the constant hiccups any longer. When saying goodbye to his beloved cat, the feline used their claws on him. The sudden pain wound up jolting Quagmire enough that his hiccups were finally gone. However, rather than going right to Peter to explain, his first thoughts were to finally get some sleep. When drifting off, that was when Peter grabbed him and placed Quagmire in the trunk of his own car to take him into the woods. Fortunately, Peter was hit on the head by Meg, who was attempting to flee the police, and Quagmire was able to escape the popped open trunk while Peter was distracted. Following in at number 9 is his abuse from Sonya. Quagmire may not be tech savvy, but the inability to properly use his laptop led him to meeting Sonya. At first, it appeared that the two were a perfect match. Sonya was just as open as Quagmire when it came to sex, always wanting to try new things. However, the longer Quagmire was with her, the more red flags showed. When she drugged him, Quagmire ignored the danger because it was a trick he had used before on more than a few people. When Sonya insisted he sleep with Ida, Quagmire caved into the request, even though he was clearly disturbed by it. All because Sonya explained it was just her pushing him to his limits like he wanted. All of it snowballed until eventually Sonya didn't take no for an answer at all, and attacked Quagmire as soon as he was coming out of the drunken clam before locking him up in her sex dungeon. Coming in at number 8, we have the time Quagmire was scammed by Brian. When Brian lost his teeth after a mishap with Peter, Quagmire surprised viewers by being the one to offer Brian a chance to get new teeth. The makeover got Brian a lot of attention and led him to being hired as a real estate agent. When his new career gave him a chance to prove himself by unloading an undesirable property, Brian wound up betraying Quagmire's kindness by tricking him into taking the place. Though Brian has handed him a ton of cash to pay him back and was doing better, Quagmire had been hesitant to buy the property and only caved when Brian mentioned a fellow pilot Quagmire hated also being interested. Once Quagmire saw the place and realized he had been tricked, he proceeded to hunt down Brian to get out of the deal before he was screwed over. Brian hid from Quagmire for hours in order to secure the contract, but was ultimately found at a cheap motel where Quagmire confronted him. Even though Brian was able to run out the clock with an insincere apology, Quagmire was able to get even by clocking Brian in the face and was able to find a way out of being stuck with the property. Next, at number 7 is losing his toupee. While trying to catch a foul ball at a baseball game, Quagmire's toupee became loose, exposing his large bald spot on the jumbo screen. Not only was he humiliated at the game, causing him to rush out in a panic, but the story then played on the local news. With everyone aware of his fake hair, he decided just to embrace his baldness, leading to him taking on some strange hobbies to fill in his time as he was no longer confident in meeting women. Quagmire became someone his friends no longer wanted to interact with. In the end, Quagmire was able to get a hair transplant and go back to normal, but the ordeal was an interesting look into how self-conscious and vain he really was. Taking the next spot at number 6 is when Quagmire was addicted to Tinder. As we stated before, Quagmire is not tech savvy at all. He didn't know about internet porn, he didn't know how to post pictures of his cat online, so it wasn't a shock when he said he had never heard of the app Tinder. After his first hookup, when he learned that he didn't have to romance the women he matched with, he became obsessed and did nothing but meet his matches. His addiction led to him becoming malnourished, dehydrated, and sleep deprived to the point where he was nearly unrecognizable, and his friends had to steal his phone to make him stop. At number 5 is the giggity wife. After a night of drinking, Quagmire woke up to find himself married to a prostitute. He tried to convince her to divorce him so they could go back to their normal lives, but Charmice's dream was to be married and taken care of. Desperate, Quagmire decided to lie about being gay, claiming he wasn't able to give Charmise the relationship she wanted. The lie seemed to work, but Charmise then caught Quagmire watching straight porn, and it led to Charmise demanding he prove it by having sex with another man. The ending scenes of the episode were disturbing, with Peter and Quagmire revolted to the point that they cried and were sick in each other's mouths before Charmise called the whole thing off. The next mention at number 4 is Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q. In season 8, fans were first introduced to Glenn's sister and her abusive boyfriend. After Quagmire was found nearly dead, Brenda showed up to be at her brother's side. While he was still healing from the ordeal, Brenda and her boyfriend stayed in his home and the entire neighborhood was exposed to just how bad a situation Brenda was in. Quagmire attempted to stay out of his sister's business at first, but after just one night of listening to how Jeff treated her, he went to Lois to ask her to try and get through to Brenda, woman to woman. Unfortunately, Brenda was deep in denial about how bad Jeff really was towards her, and much of that was because due to them being together for so long, she believed many of the horrible things Jeff said about her or accused her of. When Lois failed to reach Brenda, Quagmire set up an intervention and gave Brenda a heart-to-heart about seeing her so abused hurt him. This appeared to have gotten through to her, but didn't result in her leaving Jeff. Instead, the mismatched couple announced that they were going to be married since Brenda was pregnant. This sent Quagmire over the edge. Not only was Jeff hurting his sister, but now there was also going to be a child in the mix for Jeff to mistreat. Pushed past the breaking point, Quagmire came up with a plan to take Jeff out into the woods with him, Peter and Joe under the guise of a hunting trip, fully intending to take Jeff's life. Jeff had caught on to the plan and caught Quagmire by surprise, luring him further into the woods after knocking Peter and Joe out. What followed was a tense scene with Jeff strangling Quagmire and then beginning to dig a grave before Quagmire was revealed to still be alive. He took the opportunity to run Jeff down, pinning him to a tree with his car before helping to write up a fake note for Brenda to find. In at number 3 is Being Pranked by Peter and Joe. In season 9, during the Halloween episode, Joe and Peter had targeted Quagmire for their yearly pranking session. They egged his house, tricked Quagmire into sleeping with Joe, and infected Quagmire with various diseases. Though the pranks calmed down, Quagmire was motivated to get back at them, and so came up with an elaborate lie that he was descended from a kamikaze pilot. The backstory led them down to the harbour, where Quagmire suggested giving Joe and Peter a ride in one of the planes there. He then used the chance to scare them into thinking he was going to crash the plane into the boats, making it clear he had no desire to be pranked again. Our number 2 spot goes to when Quagmire was shot by Peter. Every now and again, Quagmire has his moments where he plays the straight man of the friend group, calling out Peter, Joe and Cleveland whenever they said or did anything he didn't approve of. One such instance was when the boys went hunting and Quagmire, noticing Peter's gun was pointed at him, asked if the safety was on. Peter, wanting to make a point, wound up taking it too far. Not only did he pull the trigger while aiming the gun at Quagmire to show the safety was on, but he then removed the safety to show when it was off, resulting in Quagmire being shot in the arm. Quagmire was understandably angry afterwards and refused to have anything to do with Peter until he could even the score between them. Finally, taking the number 1 spot is The Unkindest Cut. A simple day of being out on the boat shouldn't have ended in disaster, but Quagmire was unlucky enough to get the attention of an unusually aggressive shark that bit onto his lower region, effectively removing Quagmire's male genitalia in the struggle. Being someone so fixated on penetrative sex, Quagmire did not take the loss well. He was completely confused on what to do with himself without being able to have sex as he normally did before. He had attempted to take on some other hobbies such as ventriloquism, but during his act it was revealed that he was considering taking his own life as opposed to pretending that he was okay. Thankfully for Quagmire, Ida was able to present a solution and gave her son her old genitalia for him to use. What do you consider to be the worst thing to happen to Quagmire? Do you agree with our list? Let us know in the comment section below. Also, feel free to comment what top 10 list you would like us to cover next. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We are the Screen Addicts, addicted to the screen as much as you.